Hello, everyone. Welcome to Anthro Talks, the podcast where we explore what it really means to be human and how science, culture, and history all shape that story. I'm your host today, Olivieri, and today we're diving into one of my favorite topics, genetics, evolution, and primates. Now, don't worry, I'm not about to turn this into a biology lecture. Instead, we're going to explore how studying DNA and our primate cousins, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, and others, help anthropologists understand who we are and where we came from. So grab your headphones and let's head back a few million years. Let's start off. What's anthropology got to do with DNA? When people hear anthropology, they often think of bones, fossils, or maybe digging in the dirt. Modern anthropology is just as much about molecules as it is about skulls. Genetic anthropology, which is a brand of biological anthropology, uses DNA to trace evolution, migration, and even social behavior. Let's think of DNA like a time capsule. Every human, every primate carries within them a record of their ancestors' lives, their struggles, adaptations, and even ancient diseases. When anthropologists compare the DNA of humans and primates, they're not just seeing how we're different, they're uncovering how similar we actually are. And spoiler alert, we're a lot more alike than most people think. Now let's talk about our primate family tree. So let's talk about that family tree. Humans didn't evolve from chimpanzees, but we share a common ancestor with them that lived around 6 to 7 million years ago. We share roughly 98.8% of our DNA with chimpanzees, according to a 2005 Nature study by the Chimpanzee Genome Consortium. That means only about 1.2% of our DNA separates us from chimps, and yet, look at the differences. It's insane. Researchers like Ajit Varki and Tom Althidi, excuse me if I pronounce those wrong, have shown in genome research that these differences aren't so much about what genes we have, but how we use them. Certain genes in humans, like those that affect brain growth and language, are expressed in unique ways compared to our primate cousins. It's kind of like both species having the same instrument, but humans turned up the volume on the brain track. Now let's get into some natural selection and adaptation. Let's zoom out for a second. Evolution isn't just something that happened, but it's something that happens. Charles Darwin first outlined the theory of natural selection back in 1859, observing that traits which help an organism survive and reproduce get passed on. But today, thanks to genetics, we can actually see that process written in DNA. Take lactose tolerance, for example, the ability for adults to drink milk without getting sick. For most mammals, that gene shuts off after weaning. But in human populations that domesticated cattle, that gene stayed active. Genetic studies show that mutations spread rapidly because it gave people access to a new, rich food source. Anthropologist John Hawkes and colleagues showed in a 2007 PNAS study that human evolution actually sped up in the past 10,000 years as populations adapted to new environments and diets. And as Robin Foley notes in Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society B, evolutions often happen in mosaics of small genetic and behavioral changes that interact and overlap rather than one big leap. That's evolution and not ancient history, but a continuing story that's still unfolding today. Primates as mirrors. Now let's talk about our cousins again, not just because they're adorable, but because they teach us about ourselves. Primatologists, who are scientists who study primates, have long noticed that behaviors we thought were uniquely human actually show up in other species. Chimpanzees make tools like stripping sticks to fish for termites. Bonobos from peaceful social groups centered around cooperation and bonding. Even capuchin monkeys have a sense of fairness, like in experiments that refuse food if they see another monkey getting a better deal. That's based on a 2003 Nature study by Franz de Waal, a classic in primatology. These behaviors reveal that the roots of human morality, cooperation, and sociality stretch deep into our evolutionary past. So when we talk about human nature, what we're really seeing is primate nature evolved and expanded. Now here's a little teaching aid, the fairness test experiment. Okay, let's bring that experiment to life for a moment. Imagine two capuchin monkeys sitting side by side. They've been trained to hand a small rock to a researcher in exchange for a treat. At first, both monkeys get a slice of cucumber. They're happy. But then the second monkey gives the rock and gets a grape, which is a much tastier reward. When the first monkey gives the rock again to look at the cucumber, she throws it back and starts banging on the table in protest. This isn't just funny, but it's science. Franz de Waan's real-life fairness test shows that monkeys have a sense of justice and social comparison. It's a perfect teaching aid because it's visual, easy to picture, and makes a complex anthropological point. The roots of human morality existed millions of years before we appeared. Now let's get into what genetics reveal about modern humans. Here's the cool part. Genetics don't just tell us about ancient humans, but tells us about right now. By comparing DNA across global populations, researchers can trace ancient migrations, adaptation to different climates, and even interbreeding with extinct species like the Neanderthals and the Denisovans. Excuse me if I pronounced that wrong. That's right. Most people outside Africa still carry about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA, which influences traits like immune response and even how we process sunlight. In other words, evolution isn't a straight line, but it's more like a web, full of connections, mixing, and adaptation. Now, why it matters. So why should anyone care about this? Because understanding genetics and evolution reminds us of two things, our unity and our diversity. Genetically, humans are 99.9% identical, and yet that tiny 0.1% accounts for all the variety you see around you. Studying our shared primate heritage shows that comparison, intelligence, and culture didn't appear out of nowhere. They evolved over millions of years of cooperation and adaptation. It also challenges ideas of human exceptionalism. We're not separate from nature, but we're part of it, and recognizing that might help us take better care of our planet and each other. So, that was a lot of information I just threw at you, so I'll give you some closing thoughts just to take with you. So next time you see a monkey at the zoo or a documentary about chimps using tools, remember, you're looking at a distant cousin, one who shares most of your DNA and even some of your emotions. Our story isn't just about bones or history books. It's written in the tiny molecules inside every cell and in the shared behavior of the primates who remind us where we came from. Thank you for tuning in to Anthro Talks. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, share, or send in your thoughts on what part of human evolution fascinates you the most. Until next time, stay curious and remember, evolution never stops.